Hello, hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Kinsey Bergwin here. I'm excited to hop back on. It's been a couple weeks, so I'm excited to be here. And today's talk, I'm going to talk to the people that you feel like you've done everything when it comes to your diet. You've done a full overhaul. You're putting flaxseed in your smoothies and you're eating salads every day. And you've cut back on the sugar and you're eating more protein and you're not eating gluten and you're not eating dairy and you're doing all these things. But you're still tired and you're still bloated and you're still overweight and your periods are still a mess and you still have all the symptoms, right? We're going to talk about when diet isn't always enough. Unfortunately, this tends to be a lot of the people that come in to see me. Rarely am I their first step, right? Most of the time, they've tried a lot of things. They've tried Whole30, they've tried changing their diet, they've tried talking with their doctors or taking supplements or, doing different things, and they eventually reach a stalemate and they don't know really what to do next. And they think that based on the changes that they've made, they should be feeling better than they are, but their symptoms are still persisting. So, I'm going to share 5 different reasons why I see this crop up so frequently, what the role that diet plays, because it's an absolutely necessary foundation. And for some people, it's enough. For some people, we change their diet and it's enough to help them feel vibrant and alive every day. But how to figure out what to do next if that's not you? So, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Kinsey Bergwin. I am an integrative nutritionist in my online nutrition and wellness practice called Progressive Health and Wellness, where I work with ambitious men and women who are struggling with their mental or physical health by taking a root caused body mind approach to optimize your overall health and wellness. So, let's let's talk. Let, let's just be clear here. I'm a nutritionist. So clearly I prioritize diet. That is one of the places that we start. One of the places that we start with all clients because it's such a strong foundation. But we also have to acknowledge that diet is it's a foundation. So it's possible for there to be problems deeper beneath the surface that changing what you eat won't necessarily fix by itself. We need a strategy, we need a plan. We need, most importantly, to know what those deeper problems are and then how to get more targeted and specific to optimizing those problems so that you're getting more from your diet, more bang from your buck. Eventually, at the end of the day, we're not just what we eat, we're what we digest and absorb and assimilate and detox. So there's often a lot more to the picture. In addition, we're going to talk about what a healthy diet even means, right? So, globally, yes, that means getting rid of processed foods and noticing, paying attention to how much sugar that you're eating, reducing how much sugar that you're eating, eating more vegetables and fruit and protein and whole foods, and ideally as much organic as possible. But beyond that, what does each individual person need? And that's often a big part, big piece to the puzzle, is what's healthy for one person may not necessarily be healthy for the next person. So, I'm going to walk you through 5 of the biggest reasons that I see diet not be enough for some of the people that I work with. And what I mean by that is, despite making significant improvements in their diet, they still have symptoms, right? They still feel tired. They might still feel foggy or anxious, or they're not sleeping, or they can't lose weight. They're still constipated. They still have diarrhea. They still have a PMS and horrific periods or menopausal transitions. We'll talk about what those reasons are. So, number 1 is gut health. This one is by far the most common one that I see. So, gut health, when talking about gut health, we need to talk about, how are you digesting the food? How are you absorbing the food? What does your gut microbiome balance look like in diversity and abundance? What does your GI inflammation look like? Are there any overt infections like bacterial, fungal, parasitic? Do you have H. pylori? Do you have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth? All of these things are incredibly common and will not be fixed from dietary changes alone. What I see in these cases is sometimes people don't notice any improvement or like very little improvement from changing their diet. Or they may notice initially some great progress, but then they start to backslide. So in these cases, so how can this show up is like, how would you know if this is you? You've made different nutrition changes. I've worked with some people that have done Whole 30, for example, felt no different, felt no better. Maybe you've tried the paleo diet, or maybe you've tried low FODMAP or some of these other kind of common trendy diets, and you're still left with symptoms after, a month, 2 months or so of doing this, especially GI symptoms. If you're still noticing acid reflux or bloating or irregular bowel patterns, that tells me pretty strongly that there's more to the story. So, what is needed more than anything is going to be testing. We need to figure out what the problem actually is because symptoms can overlap so greatly. So, for most people, I would recommend a GI map stool test or some kind of comprehensive stool test, more than what you're going to get, unfortunately, from a doctor's office. Not to blame the doctor, they're just underneath the thumb of insurance. And so that limits what they can run, right? What I mean by that is if someone has diarrhea, rather than running a full comprehensive stool test that looks at how that person is digesting their food, how they're absorbing it, what the inflammatory levels are, what the microbiome balance looks like, if they have an infection, like your doctor may run like a parasite panel, right? Because they can only go based on very specific symptoms rather than looking at the overall health of the person. So I share that because, don't get discouraged if you saw a doctor and they didn't find any problems. It might just be what was tested. So testing, huge. A SIBO test may be necessary. Looking for an H. pylori might be necessary. So really getting a deeper view and understanding of what the health of the digestive tract beyond what you're eating looks like. From there, we may need to also support digestion and absorption, how you're digesting and absorbing the food. And there may be some unique differences that are required in the diet. Like, would something like low FODMAP or low histamine or low oxalate or one of these more specialized diets play a bigger role and make a bigger impact? So gut health is number one. Number two, and I'm looking at my notes over here. Number two is glucose regulation. So I'll actually use myself as an example with this. I had been a nutritionist for 5, 6 years at this point. So this was back in 2018, 2019. Been a nutritionist, for several years at this point, clearly had a healthy diet, ate whole foods, didn't eat processed foods, all the things. But my blood sugar still wasn't balanced. I was still having crashes. I clearly remember driving home from work being like, I need to freaking eat. Like, I am starving. I need to eat now. I still wanted something kind of sweetish after meals. I'd cut way back on sugar. I wasn't eating the ice cream after dinner like I always used to, but still wanted like a little something sweet after dinner. Sleep was kind of up and down. And my weight was inconsistent. My weight would fluctuate. I would fluctuate 5, 10 pounds over the course of a year or two. And my hemoglobin A1C was 5.4, which was enough to show it. My blood sugar was doing this roller coaster instead of these little, peaks and valleys. Or molehills and valleys. I remember that. Anyways, it's possible. In other words, is what I'm saying. It's absolutely possible to still have blood sugar dysregulation despite eating a healthy whole foods diet. What can be a game changer for some people, exercise, number one. I was already exercising, but this is something I see lacking in a lot of people. They're eating really clean, but they don't move. They don't, like, I'm recommending a 10-minute walk per day, and they're not even able to get that in. Like, exercise is a non-negotiable. We'll talk about stress in just a minute, but when it comes to blood sugar, exercise is going to be huge. Beyond that, though, what I see move the needle the most for people is the spacing of their meals. The body is designed to burn fat and carbs easily. But if we always have carbs coming in, Why would we ever burn fat? If you've got a great paying job and you've got money coming in ample each month and you're topping off your checking account and you're adding to your savings account, you're living off your checking account. You're never dipping into your savings account. Why would you? Right? The body is the exact same way. So, part of what was getting me in trouble back then is I was subscribing to the old narrative that we needed to eat within 1 hour upon waking and we needed to eat every 2 to 3 hours to balance our blood sugar. It's bogus. What animal do you see eat every 2 to 3 hours during the day? The large mammals like cows, right? Those are the ones that are eating all throughout the day, the large herbivores. They're also not eating protein. They're massive, so they have to eat all day. We don't want to be like cows. So, this is honestly one of the biggest things, one of the biggest game changers for people. Oftentimes, I don't even have them eat less. I just have them space their meals. So, for some people, intermittent fasting can be wonderful. It was a game changer for me. If that's right for that person, I'll recommend that. In some circumstances, it might not be right for that person. But if we can start delaying when you eat and eat breakfast, delaying when you eat breakfast or eating dinner earlier so that you're getting 14, 15, 16 hours of not eating overnight, that's great. And then beyond that, start eliminating snacks, frankly. So space your meals every 4 to 5 hours. And then eat protein, 20, 30, 40 grams, depending on the person, of protein at each meal. If we can layer in a 5-minute walk after your largest meal, these are huge. These changes alone are huge. So, blood sugar regulation is a big one, and that I'm proof that that can absolutely be possible, even if you're eating a whole foods, healthy, otherwise healthy diet. So, blood sugar regulation. We've got gut health, blood sugar regulation, nervous system. Hello, my stressed out friends. If you're burning the candle at both ends, if you're not sleeping, if you're working until 8 o'clock at night, if you are waking up at 4 in the morning because you got to get your workout in and then you're going to go work a 12-hour day, if you are working on the weekends, if you don't have time for rest, if you're never really turning off, and working parents, I see you. I see you. This can be a challenge for you, especially. If you're never turning off, this can be really big. Nervous system dysregulation and the constant on and never having time to get into a restorative space can be massive. This can also, it's not just the day in, day out stress, but life altering stressors. So, did you experience something traumatic? It could be a traumatic childhood, could be something more recent. You recently lost a loved one, or you lost your job, or you're starting to really feel a lack of meaning and purpose in the work that you do. Do you drag yourself to work begrudgingly and hate every minute that you're there? There can be other more insidious stressors, but that stress is another big one. So, diet will support a stressed out nervous system, but it won't eliminate the stress. So, some of the things that can really help with nervous system regulation, there's a lot, right? There's a lot of different things depending on the degree that we're talking about. Some of the big ones are pay attention to your breathing during the day. For some people, they set a timer to go off 4 or 5 times a day just to remind them check in, how am I breathing? Are you breathing through your mouth or through your nose? Do you notice, is your breath kind of shallow and fast? Are you standing like this or sitting like this, hunched over? Or are you breathing primarily through your chest? If that's the case, shift that and shift that intentionally. So start breathing through your nose, not your mouth. Breathe in through your diaphragm, your belly, not your chest, and take deep, slow breaths, especially prolonging the exhale. So inhale to a count of 4, for example, exhale to a count of 6. Changing your breathing throughout the day. And especially, you'll know you've mastered this skill if you're confronted with a stressful situation, traffic, meeting, whatever it might be, and your default is to slow your breathing down. That is a huge sign. That's what we're trying to get to, right? We're trying to get to that point, and also to the point where you're being more conscious of how you're breathing all throughout your day. So that's a really easy one because that sends a direct message to your nervous system that you're safe, you're not overwhelmed, you are under control. Um, that's a big one. On top of that, light, gentle movement, ideally outdoors, is also really helpful for the nervous system. So if that's a 10-minute walk in the morning and a 10-minute walk at lunch, or twice a day, ideally, one of them being in the bookend times of the day. So either in the morning or in the evening when the sun is like kind of coming up still, or when it's starting to go down, that would be preferred. And I hear a lot of you, because a lot of you work with me on, well, I just don't have time. You don't find the time, you make the time. So the ladies that are listening to me right now that work over their lunch break, I'm talking to you. The ones that get home and will make dinner, plop on the couch, I'm talking to you. I'm talking 10 minutes that we can find twice a day to get in short nature-based walk. Now, don't worry, I have a lot of compassion for you too. There's also days where with working and childcare and other responsibilities, it can feel impossible to find that time. But if we really take a second and look at our schedule and figure out where we can carve that out, we can find the time. We can make the time. Okay, let's see. In addition to the stress piece, um, for some people, work is it, not for everyone, but if work is part of the stress, then setting boundaries around your working hours as much as possible. So be kind of on the clock if you can from like the normal daytime hours, if you have direct control over that. Um, and then turning off the computer by dinner time is preferred. Otherwise, the mind can really start to run wild with that at night, and it'll impact the quality of your sleep. So just a few things. On top of that, I'll often recommend like more intentional, focused breath work. There are nervous system retraining exercises that I, or like programs that I love, like the Gupta program or DNRS. Um, we can talk about yoga, meditation, things like that. But those are some of the day-to-day things that can be meaningful needle movers. Oh, and the last one is carving out time for yourself. So for some people, this is easier than others, but what I mean by that is allowing yourself to rest on the weekends. If that's read a book for 45 minutes to an hour, if it's take an exercise class or an art class or meet friends for a walk, whatever that restorative time is for you, where you feel more lifted afterwards, allow yourself to do that. I think it's very easy to get stuck in I always have to be doing something, I always have to be productive, I always have to be social kind of mindset. But allowing yourself to carve out those times whenever you can be really restorative too. Times where you can turn off, in other words. Okay, number 4 is detox and drainage. So this is a big topic, but this is both day to day and then also more substantial. So what I mean by substantial, let's start there, is have you been exposed to mold? Are you living in a moldy home that you know of? Are you working in a moldy building? Are there like known toxins that you may be exposed to, which I'll talk more about in just a minute, but like toxins can accumulate, in other words. Or it might also mean you're not having daily regular bowel movements. Or perhaps your liver could be more supported. Like you could have overt upper right quadrant pain, or that your gallbladder isn't working effectively or sluggish, or you have gallstones. There can be like overt signs of it. of poor drainage and detoxification, or an overt exposure like something like mold or heavy metals. So, an overburdened and an underperforming drainage detox system. On the day to day, what that might look like is exposure to a lot of chemicals that are unfortunately ubiquitous in our environment. So, do you cook with Teflon? Do you use like regular personal care products? Just any regular thing that you would buy from the grocery store, for example. Um, do you use a lot of different personal care products? So, shampoo, conditioner, body wash. Then you get out, you put on lotion. Ladies, you put on makeup. You might put on like a skin moisturizer. You might use dry shampoo. You might use perfume. Are there, styling gel? There's a lot of different personal care products that might slowly make their way into your environment. Do you eat non-organic food? Do you have a water filtration system? These things, do you light candles, like regular candles during the day or night? These things, they all accumulate. And the approach that I take with this with clients is to slowly take inventory of the use of different products in your home. Start with one category, like your cleaning products or your personal care products, and then move on to your cookware, and then move on to your storage ware, and then kind of move on from there. Tackle one of these like every quarter, twice a year. Otherwise, it's very easy to feel overwhelming, but it does matter. And in the grand scheme of things, it's more about the accumulation rather than one particular product, or like one particular category. But the accumulation does matter. Okay, and then lastly, the simple fact that not all diets are created equal. Not all food is created equal, and not a health one what might be a healthy diet for one person might not be for the next. So what I really mean here is looking at more specialized diets that may be required. Something like low FODMAP for somebody that has SIBO overgrowth, or low histamine for someone that has histamine intolerance, or low oxalates. These are things that someone could really be doing all the right things. These are the people that I've worked with that followed Whole 30 and felt worse. These are the people I'm speaking to you, where you react the opposite way, or you've tried cutting out gluten, cutting out dairy, some of these big offenders, but you still have, diarrhea or anxiety, whatever it might be. Let's say you're eating a lot more fermented food, you're eating collagen, these things, you're eating bone broth, like these things that everybody touts to be healthy, but you're feeling worse. Those are the situations where a more specialized diet may be necessary for the healing phase. Eventually, we want to get out of that, but it does require fixing the underlying problem, incorporating added, more targeted support, and following a more specialized diet for a period of time before we'll get to the point that we can reintroduce foods and have a more varied, kind of normal, if you will, diet. So that's a big one, because that one can catch people off guard sometimes. So keeping that in mind, that's where an elimination diet could be helpful, but it's also where like some training and education and knowledge is important. Like, who would know to avoid histamine? Who would know what foods oxalates are in? So there's just different situations where it can be harder to navigate without a plan. Okay, so my last few things in what to do about it are, I've kind of sprinkled in a lot of those along the way. Beyond that, my recommendation is consider testing. Consider running, I mean, even like basic blood work, again, stool testing. That's part of like knowing what testing to run is part of the equation. But consider having testing run, whether that's through someone like me, or through your doctor, whoever that's through. Consider having testing run so that you can get some answers, take data-driven action steps, and not just guess on what else, or like really lean into a healthy diet. I would really encourage getting some testing. So testing is number one. Look beyond diet. when it comes to healing, diet is huge. It is absolutely one of the biggest pillars that we work with, but we do have to move beyond that and look at, what are your hormones? What does your nervous system regulation look like? What does your gut health look like? And sometimes having a third party to work through those things with and know what's normal, what's not, what this is a sign of, help put the pieces together can be really helpful. For you, it might be normal to wake up ravenously hungry in the morning or to feel ravenously hungry all throughout the day. But to someone else, it's like, no, that's actually a symptom, right? So that can be really helpful to have a third party hear or oversee this to help you clarify what's really normal and what's not. Um, and then supplements. Supplements absolutely play a role. They supplement a healthy diet and lifestyle, but knowing which supplements to take, how to take them, that's where the individuality and having a strategy comes into play too. So I promise this isn't all to tout like work with a professional. Yes, for some people that can be helpful, but more so what I'm saying is acknowledge when the next step might be necessary, right? Acknowledge when, okay, I don't know what else to do with diet. Or here are some additional things to look at. Here are some additional tweaks that I can make to my diet, like the nervous system regulation and the exercise and the blood sugar work that I had mentioned. So all of that to encourage this isn't the time to give up. You are absolutely capable of healing. It just may require a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more strategy and some minor additional tweaks to get you exactly where you want to be. So I hope that was helpful. For those of you that are listening that are like, this is me, I feel like I don't know what the next step is, where the next step is to turn. I do offer free 15-minute discovery calls. We can chat more about what symptoms you're having, what you're looking for, and I'll share how I help, what the process looks like. And if it feels like a good fit, great. If not, that's okay too. And if not, then I hope that some of the other resources and tips I've provided have been helpful. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day. Bye.